Christopher, thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I must say that I'm a fan of yours for like quite some time because I'm following you on LinkedIn. And I saw that you help like dozens, maybe hundreds of designers landing their like dream UX job. So the whole discussion is not going to be only about like getting the dream UX job, but also I want to go deeper a bit in this episode and kind of like ask also the questions like why should you land the UX job in the first place? Like what are the kind of what's the magic behind it? And why so many people are like striving to get a job in UX and why are also struggling. So thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely. Really happy to be here, Tom. And thank you for inviting me on.
Why is it a good idea to land a UX job or how to become like a freelancer in UX? Why is it wise, like from your point of view, kind of quit some high salary job, high paying job and become like a freelancer or getting like your dream UX clients? Like, what's your take on that?
Sure. So let me just clarify what UX Playbook is. So UX Playbook is a educational brand, and we do playbooks, courses, and coaching because I believe that to be a varied product spectrum of how I help designers, right? Playbooks being these self-paced sort of recipe books for how to conduct, whether it's UX activities or building your portfolios. And then to your question, which is actually, there's a lot to your question, right? So it's like, why land a UX job? So let's just go there first. Well, you'll land a UX job because you care about stability of income, right? As a UX designer. So you get paid at the end of the month and you don't have to worry about chasing clients. I got more expertise as I worked more, and there was a consistent stream of work coming to me and also a consistent stream of income. So that's probably why most people out there are trying to find a job, because it gives them that stability. And also it gives you an environment in which to learn in, right? And then for me, why did I quit my high paying job? Well, the first thing is I didn't enjoy it, man. I'll be honest. It was high paying, but that was about it, right? Like high paying, high status, but really it didn't mean anything to me. For me, it was more about the impact that I made in the organization and in the products. And as soon as I knew that impact was limited and the organizational culture was just not where I would be if I wanted to thrive and grow further in my career, I just, called bullshit and just left. Right.
What would you recommend? Like also when you are talking with kind of like your students or also like other designers, because you obviously achieved a lot. You were head of design, you quit, you building like your own path and career. What's kind of like the game changer like inside your head? Like what's the one thing you would say that changes the perception of UX, for example, in the business? My point is I think a lot of people are thinking about UX design about just like a design. So you are just doing some like images or whatever. But what do you think needs to be changed in your mindset to have like a bigger impact for your clients or for the businesses? Like, how would you explain the role and importance of UX?
The biggest change for me in mindset terms is actually building my own products and running my own business as a designer, right? I completely reframed my thinking of how I should go about this, right? As a designer, maybe you've inherited different processes, ways of thinking through your organization, et cetera, et cetera. So you already have this kind of view, but then when you do it for yourself, it's completely different. And you end up breaking some of the bad habits or, gaining some good habits along the way, hopefully for your business. And knowing that everything is around you is being designed, from your light switch to like how the toilet flushes, physical things, but also like spaces, roads, like everything is being designed. So I think as a designer, we have to kind of look at the world in that view. Then you can start to critically analyze the things you're doing. It's like, why am I doing this? And why is the output that? So that I think early in my career, I was like, okay, well, design is actually just a way of looking at the world and to be more intentional and purposeful to an outcome, right? Design is kind of like the way you look at the world, and everything you interact with has been decided by somebody. Somebody purposely did it. Whether you call that engineering, whether you call that design, that's up to you. I call it design. So it's like everything, right? We had this quote that we used to like to say in our team, which is UX is life.
A lot of designers are just focused on like websites, apps, and like digital stuff, and they don't realize that like everyday interaction with the world around you is actually also UX. Now, the way you operate like systems, for example, in your car is also part of UX. So people are, I think, a little bit like limited. And one thing I'm seeing is that they are designing just to kind of like please their ego a bit, you know? So they are like really creating something like beautiful, and the interactions are like stunning, and it looks good, and it's perfect for their like portfolio, but they're lacking to explain the benefits of having it in the first place. So was the ROI of like investing into good UX? Like what's the difference between hiring a UX designer for like $1,000 in $10,000? Like what's the difference? Like why should they invest? I'm just trying to explain the benefits, for example, in data. What would you say is like one of the common mistakes people do when they are, for example, trying to get a job or like applying for a job or maybe trying to sell their work to clients?
The most typical mistakes is, I think this happens with like if you're trying to sell products as well and looking for a job, like from a designer's point of view. So the first one, let's just say like applying for jobs, you just apply to too many and you treat them all like the same. You have one portfolio, you have one CV, you have one cover letter, and you just apply to so many, right? So in the product space, it's kind of like not knowing who you're targeting, right? Not knowing your ideal customer persona. So they're just kind of generic BS, and you're just trying to, play the law of numbers. As long as many people see this as possible, one of them will land. What you need is more of a personalized approach. You need a targeted person, like someone that you're really speaking to. So it could be like junior designers in Mexico City, right? Fintech in San Jose, that's Series D, for example, right? Like those are just some random examples. That's the first thing, like really targeted approach. And then the second thing as well, like kind of building off that, is that I don't know why designers are so lazy with this kind of research, because it's in our job description, right? Like we should be doing
Yeah.
this. So when they go for like, they try to personalize it, they might have read the website for like 5 minutes. That's not enough, right? You have to like listen to a podcast with the CEO, watch some videos of the announcement on this product feature, really like dive into things that are non-typical in order to stand out. And I believe that getting clients as a freelancer is the same, right? Like you have to kind of like know the brand, know the product, and like can speak to it in a unique way versus everybody else trying to pitch the product, right? So they're not even practicing what they preach, which like for me is like, I'm like, that's crazy, right? So that first impression and that preparedness, I think is also a lot of where people kind of like trip up. They just kind of turn up and see how it goes.
When you don't do the homework, when you're trying to get a client or get a job, like how would you expect that you would do it when you have the job, right? So this always like the whole like preparation and research. I think that's a huge part of the job, and I think that people are missing out that when you have a client, you need to like become like an expert in the industry. You need to understand the company. You need to understand the people working there. What do you think is like the most like BS best practice you've like encountered in UX or in UI?
Oh man, specifically for getting a job, there's so many, but like the one thing that pisses me off is like, this is what a resume should look like. I mean, I wrote a test as well. That one is
Yeah.
like terrible. I was coaching this designer and he was like, "Hey, Chris, what do you think about this guy?" And he shared me a LinkedIn profile and the guy was charging like, I don't know, like $5,000 to like redesign your resume. And I'm like, what are you like? Never pay for this service. It won't get you the job. Like, I don't
Yeah.
understand. I think designers are so obsessed around their portfolio that they almost miss the outcome they want. The outcome they want is to get a job. But the way to get there is not only your portfolio. Yes, it's one of the most important parts, but don't forget everything else, right? Don't forget how to prepare, like figuring out what you say in interviews, how to reach out, right? Like all of these other things in that job search process that people are talking about, not talking about. There's actually quite a lot to it, right? That's why they're so hungry for this type of content. And as you said, like the internet is flooded with that just because that performs better than other content. But I'm sure there's very deep like content out there. It's just that it's not surfacing because everybody's trying to look for a job. So therefore you see like resume best practices and all this stuff.
How to stand out in this like crowded market, and how to stand out with also your work and your design.
Yeah, I think the first step of standing out is just having the ability to share, like, or at least building a muscle that you share often. So having that and like, otherwise, if nobody knows about your work, you'll never stand out, right? So the first muscle is to build is a rhythm or a consistency of sharing your work. And over time, you would build up your voice, build up your style, kind of like starting a YouTube channel. The first video you're going to make is going to be terrible, but by the 100th, you would have learned some things along the way and about yourself, but also the medium in which you are producing. And that's a good start. And then the other part of your question is like innovation. How do people do something different without, I guess, overly trying to be different? I think also innovation is a muscle in itself, right? Without creating a lot of crap things, you won't ever get there, right? And I think that there are things that we look on the surface and we're like, oh, that's truly differentiated or that's truly innovative. But most of the stuff I believe are just kind of like remixes of something else or clashing two ideas together that seem non-related, right? But how do you even think about that? Well, it's just kind of like being really observant with the world and then trying to go through that process of creating something, not to be innovative, but just creating something, right? That you find interesting. And this is a key part. Like, I think the people that do interesting things that all kind of make us go, wow, is because they're curious about the things that they're doing, right? You can kind of see it. Like, it's really weird, sort of intangible nature of what they're doing. And they're just like, hey, I like chess and I like product design. Can I sort of smash those two things together? Like, whatever it is, right? The bullet train in Japan, a little side tangent here, it got inspired by, I think, a bird, if I'm not mistaken. The head of that train and how it's like aerodynamic got inspired by that.
Mhm.
It's like, well, what the hell, dude? Like, how do you even think about like, engineering like a complex product that carries like millions of people and then like, look for like nature for inspiration, right? So clearly that person was very like versed and interested in a bunch of different things and then collided these two things together to solve that problem. So I think that's what innovation is. Like, I don't think we need to overcomplicate it. It's do a lot of things, follow the things that you find interesting, and then share that. And then over time, you would kind of like narrow in on what's interesting, what's different, what you uniquely like. And then because you've built that sharing muscle, you shared it a bunch of times and hopefully something happens, right? And but to have the framing of like, I want to innovate is really hard for most people, right? We're not all visionary designers. It's just kind of stressful, right? But once you can't like, if you put that in practice, once you come in contact with this problem that you're uniquely able to solve in an interesting way, I believe it would surface itself. So as long as you put those consistent habits together, then it's kind of, you're just waiting for serendipity, right? Something is going to happen as long as you do that work and and don't sort of force innovation, I think it would come up based on the situation that you find yourself in.
Yeah, we're still like touching the surface in like mentioning that UX is like all around us. And for example, the train was like inspired by a bird. Like, what fields do you think can influence like your design game the most? And I mean like something that is not really design related. Do you have like any source of like inspirations or like type of books or movies, whatever, to kind of change your like perception of how things work, which could eventually like elevate your design game?
Yeah, I can't remember what the discipline is called, but nature has been a source of inspiration for everything from engineering to design to medicine to basically everything. So nature is definitely a place to look to, just depends on what you're passionate about. Sci-fi films is always a great one because people kind of imagine the future and then we dial it back into what's possible and what's realistic and what's feasible. So those are some good places to look. I think also history is an interesting kind of place to look to as well. Like what happened in the past tends to repeat itself. And
Hmm.
it's like same problems, just maybe potentially different solutions. I don't have any I don't have any necessarily recommendations for like books or movies, but I really like history stuff, sci-fi stuff. Yeah, I really like those two. What other places can you get inspiration from? This is so hard. Like again, it's a bad answer, but it's like, what are you interested in, dude? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I believe that all designers have their own different flavor. And that's why I kind of want to lean into that questioning on like why you're doing it, right? And like, what do you like? Because anything in your experience and anything in your interest can be pulled back into your work. And that's kind of the message here, I believe. So if I say
Yeah.
sci-fi and you hate sci-fi, don't don't look to that.
Yeah.
Like that's just not the point here. Like not giving you this silver bullet solution. It's way more fuzzy than that, and it's about like real world things. I hope that was I don't know useful for people.
Yeah, like sci-fi is a good tip, but like I never really thought about it. It also like sci-fi movies, for example, and books could be like a yeah, it's like thinking about the future, how the future will look like. And like for example, to me, like what's kind of like I think it was beneficial for my like UX thinking is definitely like psychology and like behavior economy. So for example, like Dan Ariely and Daniel Kahneman, because it kind of like tells you why people are making the choices that they actually do. And the surprising fact is that a lot of times it doesn't make any sense. So they kind of because it cannot be like the revolution in behavior economy was that you just cannot like quantify it. You know, it's just it's not based on like mathematics. People make like irrational decisions based on like number of factors. And if you like understand why people behave the way they behave, I think it could be beneficial for UX sometimes in the bad way because you can actually influence people to do what you like them to do. But that's for example like my source that is interesting and like connecting the discussions like to sci-fi. So what do you think the future of like UX and design looks like?
I mean, that's a good question. This is probably going to be a terrible answer, but look, assisted, right? Assisted in a bunch of different ways where one designer can potentially do the work of like 10. So with tools that they could leverage. So for example, if there's an existing system, so like let's just imagine like Amazon, right? Where they have existing systems and they have a rigorous platform to ABCD test different types of things that improve conversion. And then they have all these data points that you can learn from being a designer there because you know what works, what happened, what are these experiments they've run. So you as a UX designer, if you have sort of that 10,000-foot view of what's happening, what's selling more, what converts better, and then sort of a box, like a Lego brick box of like, okay, I can fit these together, then what you do as a UX designer will drastically change, right? Not saying that you don't do on the ground research, but you can actually just launch a bunch of experiments. And because Amazon has millions of users every single month that purchase stuff from them, the data set that you have is so rich that you can basically launch 10 experiments at once just by yourself, right? Because you have all these assisted tools. So that's where I see it in terms of tools helping one designer to make a bunch of different decisions and different experiments to sort of enrich the product that they work on and to make it more effective based on the goal. And yes, everyone's saying AI tools, but I believe that to be true because, like, well, why have a lot of people sort of manually doing these things when you can have agents that can kind of do some of the hard work for you, but fundamentally you're making the decision, you're making the call, you're setting up the experiments, but you're getting input from a bunch of different sources, right? So that's like one part where the designer is more of the conductor in an orchestra, and whoever's making the music are the agents or the tools that you have at your disposal. And every conductor will, play the orchestra differently, right? Will conduct something else. So that's one sort of future I see. And this kind of links to also this solopreneur movement where there's like one person doing this business because of all these tools that the internet and AI tools enable. So I think that the future of designers is also more of them are going to start businesses. And it's not just going to be the ones that, typical designers, they're like, I'll start an agency or I'll start a t-shirt company, right? Like very like print based, service based, but now it's going to be more opinionated digital products on the market because they can just launch now with a little bit of assistance, maybe not that much, and actually like produce these things that they care about, right? And then the future of like products out there, I hope will be just hyper opinionated. They're doing a to-do list app, but it's just completely different, right? Like it's just a cool to-do app. Like it's just, interesting in a way that they're like, hey, this is why this works. This is how it looks. This is what the brand sounds like. And I think we just need more digital products out there that do that instead of these kind of enterprise looking apps that we're kind of familiar with and we're just kind of a bit bored of, lack of personality, doesn't really, do anything for us.
Yeah, I also have to agree, like the future where like a lot of these like day-to-day tasks would be like automated, I think is definitely the way to go. And I think that like the AI would like play like a huge role in it, even though that right now it's just a buzzword and it's still kind of like a geeky way to how to like automate and do stuff. I think it's going to be like much more deeply integrated into the workflow we do. And I think it will eventually mean that a lot of UX designers will actually lose their job because if you are just average or below average, I think you would be just useless, to be honest. I think only the best would like prevail because AI, I think you shouldn't take it as a threat. I think you should take it as like your apprentice, just someone who's like helping you. So you could do the work faster, but if you don't have like the good way of thinking about UX, I think there's not going to be a place for you. So I think eventually it could be good for like for the sake of like innovation and like new advancement in UX. Like this kind of for some it's a scary future, but I think it could help us a lot.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this sort of integration of all the tools that we use. And because I think now is quite disconnected, like just in terms of product development, like everything is kind of disconnected and you need someone to sort of hook up the insights from, let's say, user research to your Jira ticket, for example, right? Or even funnel that into when you're on the canvas in Figma designing. So it's like, imagine if all these tools can integrate and can pull in data that's relevant to that designer's job or that developer's job, just be so much more helpful and useful and to be informed. There's no, like, you can imagine the product building silos to be broken if data can be sort of that bottom layer. And to do this integration, we would need AI because there'll be like a million different tools and where does the data come from? So AI would help in doing that instead of hiring a bunch of like data scientists and researchers to do that nasty work on the ground, which is great.
Mhm.
Like potentially we don't need that because we've collected a lot of data for this company to start off with, right? And a lot of that
Yeah.
data is there, just that we don't have a sophisticated way of pulling it, understanding it, and then chopping it up. So it's like, if for enterprise companies it's already there, then a lot of companies out there are like asking the question, well, how do we make this richer? How do we make whatever the role is better? And I think that's where it's really interesting, where designers can help solve the problem, right? Designing that infrastructure of understanding across the company, across products, like super, super interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to like go out for a walk and having like a voice assistant I can talk to regarding like the whole idea, the concept of like, I don't know, like screen flow and everything, and just like get back to the office and it's going to be right there on the screen. This is like the ideal outcome for me, because I think that AI wouldn't like, there's still like a level of like creativity in our brain that just AI would, I think it would take like a long time before like this kind of like unexpected thinking, you know? I think that if you have this unexpected thinking, you can like connect like seemingly like disparate like dots like together into something unique. That's, I think, where the value is. And like the designing and like the execution, like I would rather like push it to some like automation, and maybe it wouldn't be like 100% perfect, but it will like save me so much time, because sometimes I just have an idea or like a vision, and then I need to spend like dozens of hours just to like really design wireframes and everything, just to like kind of get it like get it out of my head, you know. But I just want to like talk to someone and he would do it. He or she would do it.
There is something I want to share.
Okay.
And I'm really excited about this because it's kind of,
Nice.
yeah, it's exciting because I'm on the journey. So like I've been in the UX field for like 10 years, and I've only recently started this sort of entrepreneurship journey, and I really like it. And I believe that from doing this, I'm a better designer because of it. And I think everybody should do this, right? Like to
Okay.
build something for yourself and to come up with your own sort of problems and solutions to solve that thing. And it's just really fun, and it just makes you more, I think, a well-rounded designer. So the thing that I wanted to share is this community that's very small now called backlog.design, if you guys want to search it on.
Mhm.
And it's basically a hub or a community for designers like myself, where we are on the journey of building something. And, our distribution channel is content, but we're doing all sorts of different businesses, right? From coaching to agency to digital products and a host of other things. Like we have authors there. And I think it's just a really fun place to learn the game of entrepreneurship, what works for others that you can then apply to your business. And I recently did a talk on ADP List's Be More conference, and it's about how I started my journey and what I learned along the way. And I think reflecting on that is really fun. And in this community, I also do that quite often. If you're interested and you're on that same journey, then check out backlog.design.
It's really an excellent tip. I'll definitely join the community as well, because it's, yeah, I think you're right. Like having great people around you, ideally, that are on like a higher level than you are. So you're just trying to keep up, is something that like builds everything like better. Also your life, your career, your way of thinking. So I'm really happy for like sharing this community, and I think everyone should definitely join if you really mean it, doing the UX and getting better. So thanks again, Christopher, for joining us today, and I hope that we are gonna see each other in the future and kind of like reevaluate the future we mentioned. So let's talk in, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, and maybe we can just like laugh about what we mentioned today, because maybe it's gonna be like something completely else. So
Yeah,
thank you,
definitely. Our
Christopher.
predictions are going to be terrible and completely off. But yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you again for having me. And it's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you.